Today on the Hartley Show, we're going to be talking about the various formats that comic books come in. As well, we're going to give you an overview of how to care for your comics. Welcome to the Hartley Show. So we're going to give you an overview right now of the different various formats comic books come in. Now, way back in the day, in the 90s and 80s, when they first sort of just started putting out different formats for comic books, you had they would refer to this as a prestige format book, which is to be said to say that it had a nicer paper stock, shinier. Actually, this is barely even a comic. This is more of a magazine, and it had a solid spine. Books like The Dark Knight Returns, the classic Frank Miller Batman comic, was presented in this format. You had 4 issues. Your classic comic book is basically a magazine-style format. It uses 2 staples to bind it, and it's floppy, as it were. These things are referred to as trade paperbacks, and generally a trade paperback refers to a collected edition of a bunch of different stuff. Oftentimes a trade paperback is a collected story arc. So in this particular case, it was a crossover storyline called Exiles that ran between New Mutants and Journey into Mystery, and this collects that entire story. This would be what classically you'd refer to as a graphic novel, this particular book, because this wasn't printed in anything other than this format. I believe it was Will Eisner that coined the phrase graphic novel with this book, I think, called Conversation with God, but I might be wrong on that. Most people do accredit the Will Eisner with the term graphic novel. I fucking hate the term graphic novel. I find it incredibly odd and snobby. Sure, it's better than prestige format, but frankly, I just prefer the term collected edition or even just book or hardcover, because graphic novel sounds like you're trying way too fucking hard to make comics sound legitimate, and they already are. So basically what you've got here is you can refer to pretty much all of these, with the exception of the magazine floppy style format, as a graphic novel. Trade paperback specifically refers to, obviously, a paperback and not a hardcover, generally referring to a collected edition, and a graphic novel generally is going to refer to specifically something only produced in this format originally, and of course, a hardcover is a hardcover, and in this case it's an omnibus because it's fucking huge and has a whole bunch of shit in it. Hey guys, it's time for emails and tweets. First up, we've got Terry, who asks, when you put your pants on, which leg do you put in first and why? Terry, I have no idea, but I promise you I'll pay attention from this point. Maybe we'll even film it. No? No? Don't listen to him. We might film it. Next up, we've got Dougie T, who writes in, Voltaire said it is better to judge a man by their questions rather than their answers. Do you agree? I don't read anything other than comic books. Come on, who's this Voltaire guy? And sure, I agree. Yeah, it's a smart question. I'm just going to say I agree because I have no idea what you're talking about. Next up, we got Booster G-Man, who writes in, which popular comic character can you not stand to look at? My answer for that will have to be Bartox, because he scares the bejesus out of me. He's like a raging sort of super homo Sean Connery, and frankly, I think he gives me a bit of an erection, so I don't like to look at him because, I'm supposed to be hetero. Next up, Melvin writes in, which comic reality would you want to visit or live in the most? And that's a tough question to answer. On one hand, I like to think the DC Universe because I know the most about it and I'd be able to live as a king there. But really, I think it would be Captain Carrot and his amazing Zoo Cruise universe because it's just a big old cartoony love fest universe and I wouldn't ever have to worry about anything, ever. And it'd be fuzzy and warm, stuff like that. Next up, Ivy Girl writes in, what, in your opinion, is the worst storyline ever? And that's an easy question to answer. The Spider-Man Clone Saga. That thing fucking sucked balls, and it should have been done away with in 2 issues. Next up, Ivan Q with like an accent aigu over the A. Ivan? Eh? There have been moments in the history of comics where women have been objectified as nothing more than scantily clad maiden warrior sex bombs to satiate the urges of adolescent boys. Which comic babe makes your Avengers assemble? That's a good question. I'd have to go with Dream Girl from the Legion of Superheroes and Lady Death because she's hubba hubba sexy. Thanks for writing in, guys. And of course, if you do want to write in, just email us or tweet to the addresses right here on the screen, places there-ish. And as always, thanks for writing in. So next up, we're going to tell you how to take care of your comic books. And first off, we'll start off with a description of how to handle your comic and what the important part of a comic is that's precious as far as the value of a comic goes. Now, the key element to holding a comic book and caring for it is understanding the spine and the corners are the most precious part of the comic book. Now, the spine, if it's cracked at all, is devalued immensely. And so what that means is you can hold a comic like this all you want. That doesn't hurt the spine whatsoever. But once you start holding it from this corner, specifically if you're holding the actual spine, that's when you start cracking it. And you'll see this quite often. Somebody will rest a comic book, like say on a lip here where there's a slight lip. They'll rest it like that. And sometimes the spine will literally crack just from being rested improperly like that. And quite often, I mean, it's a normal instinct for someone to want to grab something from that end, but that's the worst end to grab it from. And chances are, if you're grabbing it like this, chances are you fucked up your comic book. If you grab it from this side, you're fine. And again, actually, as much as it might look like something that's bad, rolling it up is actually probably a good way to care for it. Now, as far as taking care of your comic book without your hands, classically what you'll do is you'll get yourself the plastic sleeve so it can withstand any sort of water damage, and a backing board. These backing boards, it's actually important that you understand that there's two sides to a backing board. You've got a shinier side and a duller side. Now you probably can't make up the difference too much on film there, but the shinier side of a backing board is actually designed to be acid free, so that when you put this in your bag, which is also designed to be acid free, it's not going to have any detrimental effect on the ink that the comic is actually produced on. So when you get these backing boards and the sleeves, it just protects it all the more. I could drop this and it'll probably withstand a fall better than it would without the backing board and whatnot. And this doesn't make this thing invulnerable, not by any stretch of the means. A lot of people think that this protects it more than it does, and the spine is still totally fragile in this case. But what's really protected are the four corners, which are crucial to comic value, and it does protect the spine somewhat, but it particularly protects it from water damage. Now you can get these great sleeves that I don't have one here to demonstrate. It's a whole hard shell. And the CCG, the comic grading guides, that's what they put these things in. It's a big clear shell that basically preserves it and makes it somewhat invulnerable. You have to take like a hammer to it or drive over it to fuck the thing up. And unfortunately, like I said, I don't have an example of it. Now, moving on to the tape portion, because you want to tape these things to keep it secured and all that. I use a diagonal taping method, as you can see here. Now, the reason I do this is twofold. Can you see that there?
Yes.
One, it makes it really easy to open it up. You just put your finger in there and just pop it off. Now, the key thing to understanding why this makes a difference is the older tape gets, and I have to recommend, by the way, that the tape you do use is a Scotch tape and not the clear Scotch tape, because the more clear it is, chances are the more sticky the glue will be. Throughout time, the longer the tape has been attached to the bag, can you see the details there? That in opening them up, it fucks up the bag itself, and half the time the tape just rips right off. You can see multiple examples of this where there's a slight tear in the back here. Now they open up okay, but another problem too with doing it like this, straight up and down, is that if you pull back here like this, you can actually create stress on the spine portion of the comic, which is something you never, ever, ever want to do. And as I showed you there, the most annoying thing, and you can see again examples of this actually where the tape has actually been broken from being opened up and the tape has warped the plastic bag here. And this is something that can be absolutely avoided by just a simple diagonal method. That even if this does get stuck there, chances are when I go to pop this bad boy open, it's just going to pop off fairly easily. And even if it does rip the tape, from my experience, it'll tend to just rip the tape and not screw up the plastic bag, which is what you want. So there you have it. How to basically take care of your comics, the difference between the different types of formats of comics, graphic novels, trade paperbacks, and the like. Thanks for watching, and as always, thanks to Taz for letting us film here. Ciao.